Hello and welcome to Long Beach Lens. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Our guest today is the retired now Director of Public Affairs and Special Projects for the California State University Chancellor's Office, and she's a friend of ours here at Long Beach Cap. Please join me in welcoming Colleen Bentley. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Derek. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad we could pull you away from a Dodger game to be here with us too. I know you're a big Dodger fan, aren't you? So retired. So for those of you who don't know, those of us rather who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background, Colleen, and what you were doing that you retired from.
First of all, I'm a Cal State Long Beach grad. So many years ago, went to school there and on the alumni board. But what I was doing at the Chancellor's office and what I had done in a few other places before that was Director of Public Affairs as well as then Director of Special Projects. So I did media training. I worked with the Chancellor and the Board of Trustees. I was the chief spokesperson for them in a crisis or any kind of dealings with the media, newspapers, print, radio. And then as Director of Special Projects, I was writing speeches for the Chancellor and trustees and serving as the liaison with the Board of Trustees for academic affairs. And I also was making videos, and one in particular, if you have a minute. In 2011, the Cal State Board of Trustees voted to give honorary degrees to the Japanese Americans who were taken from our campuses right after Pearl Harbor. There were 120,000 across the country, and we figured out 250 of them had been at Cal State campuses and were interned with their families. They voted to give them honorary degrees, and that became my special project. We did videos. We found 125 of the families, interviewed some of them who were still living. Most of them were in their late 80s, 90s. And created these videos about their stories, and it won a national prize. And that was probably the best special project that I did when I was director there, and it was just a wonderful time to do things like that, working with people who...
And historical as well. I mean, that's
and my major was history, so I really liked that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I was going to ask from a speech writing perspective, is there one that stands out in your mind that you worked on that just like, wow, that one was the one?
Actually, when Barry Munitz was chancellor, he graduated from Brooklyn College, and they asked him to do the commencement address back there. So this was, in the early 90s. And so he wanted to get that quote in there from President Kennedy about ask not what you can do. He wanted to get that one in there. And I said, well, why don't we do an audio clip and we'll try to see if we can get, and this is an outdoor stadium where he was speaking, see if we could get the people back there who weren't used to doing something like that. They're used to somebody just speaking back then. And they did it. So we popped in Kennedy's voice, hearing it on during his commencement address, and people were just, like turning around. Where did that come from? So that was probably my most fun speech.
Multimedia.
Yeah, way back then when you didn't do things really like that very much. So that was fun.
So that innovative touch that you had is really what elevated you to the level of respect that you have in the industry.
Well, what I like about when I was first a newspaper reporter, you never knew what was going to happen, what stories you were going out on. When you're director of public affairs and you were I worked at UCI also, you never knew what was going to happen, what professor was going to win a Nobel Prize, what you were going to be writing about. And the same at Cal State, and I'm working with 23 campus public affairs directors, and something is always going on. So you just have to be ready for anything, and I think that's what I have always liked about my jobs,
Now, compare being a newspaper reporter to working in the academic environment. Those are just
the absolute other side. I mean, the newspaper reporter, you're basically taking control of the interview, and you've still got a boss, you've got your editors and everything, but you're out and about all the time. When you're in an academic institution, you're pretty much in the, either the college, the university, or the chancellor's office most of the time. And you have a lot of bosses, an awful lot of them. But it's still, you're still writing. I'm still writing. I'm still doing videos. So I'm still doing kind of the same thing, but from the dark side, as those the newspaper people would tell us when we went over to PR.
And you started out the writing at UNLV, you were saying.
Yeah, I was the editor of the student newspaper at UNLV. That's where I went to work on my graduate degree, and got fired by the student body president, but that's a totally different story. He didn't like the editorials that we were writing.
All right.
And I also taught journalism back there for a year.
So even back then, you were speaking your piece no matter what, huh?
Yeah, I fought it, but I lost.
Right. But that's the point. I mean, in today's society, you know, with it being so divisive, it sounds like, what advice would you have to young media or journalism students that, you know, to stick to their principles, et cetera, as they're coming up in this industry?
You have to. If you don't have your ethics in almost any job, not almost any job, you're not going to do well. I mean, something's going to be tugging at you going, I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, or, you know, you just have to be ethical and fair in those kind of positions. And you have to, you know, you have to want to go out and get that story. You want to be the first to report it. But I remember a veteran journalist, and I can't recall his name, said, with all the social media that's going on now, that's another thing. You have to really get into social media. It's not like newspapers they're going to be around, but, you know, you really have to do that. I remember a reporter saying one time, you report first, you confirm second, and you correct third in this new day and age, because look what happens when things go out there. Look at the school shootings, the wrong numbers come out, this and that, and then you have to backtrack and do it. So try to get it right first, but if you get it wrong, correct it.
So in reading some of your literature, because now that you've moved into the age of retirement and getting to enjoy life even more so, one of the key points as a consultant, so first, we have about 5 minutes in this segment. Introduce what you're doing as a consultant and how that's helping nonprofits and businesses locally and around the nation.
I do media training. Basically what I do, and I do it mostly for higher education institutions. Like I've done it for all the 23 campuses. I've done it for the UC campuses, a few other places around. Mainly my main client right now is the American Association of State Universities and Colleges, and they run a program called the Millennium Leadership Institute, and that's for people who say at the level of vice president or associate vice president or chancellor, associate vice chancellor at a university who want to rise to be a president or a chancellor. So they're climbing the ladder. So this Millennium Leadership Program is a week-long program, and they learn about budgets, they learn about interviewing, they learn about search firms, they go to Capitol Hill and meet with the government officials. But what I do is 2 days of media training, and we... out
of a week, they dedicate 2 days to media training?
Well, it's 2 like half days, and then they started another program, so I'm doing that one too for emerging leaders.
It just speaks to the importance of it, is my point.
And they do, and I will just brag a little and say of the 12 years we've been doing it, I do this with another gal who was a TV reporter up in the Bay Area. We've gotten the highest evaluations consistently of all the faculty members ever. Anyhow, so what we do is we teach people, we make the participants come with an issue for them to talk about on camera. They can't make up stuff. It's got to be something that's really going on their campus. And then we will do a general session of showing some videotapes of good and bad interviews. And it doesn't have to be higher ed people. It can be politicians. It can be anybody. And then we ask them to talk about it. And it's real interactive. We don't just talk. And then the second day, we put them in a room and we have them work with a partner, one of the other participants, and they have to tell what they're going to talk about. And here's my message points that I want to get across. What do you think about that? And the person will say, I think that's really good, but I think I'd focus on this. And then we interview them for 2 to 5 minutes. And then we go back and we critique them. We have their partner critique them. Did they get their message points out? And we try to give very good criticism. We're not yelling at people or telling them you're horrible. You know, you want to help people improve. And this is a program it started out as an African-American program to get more African-Americans in higher education at the highest level. And then they started adding in Latinos, Asians, Caucasians, but primarily minority people to diversify the higher education system. And it's just been, they've had great success. So I'm really proud to be a part of that program.
And this is in Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C.,
where you're doing that program.
We've been doing that for a dozen years now, 15 years.
Right.
And like I said, I do it for the campuses on occasion too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're about a minute away from a break, and what I'd like to do is when we come back from that break, talk to you more about how specifically you're helping, whether it be those participants or how it could help maybe a nonprofit like Long Beach Community Action Partnership or a local business in preparing for people like you who come at them with the microphone and the pen and paper. So when we come back, we're going to take a short break, first of all, and continue our discussion with Colleen Bentley. Stay tuned for more of Long Beach Lens.
First begin just by welcoming everybody to the second annual Powwow Long Beach. For me as mayor, it's very easy to say street art is amazing, it's relevant, it's important, and it absolutely should be embraced by cities. But I want you all to know that that's not the case in every city. So every city is not going to go ahead and open their arms up and say, yes, let's get street artists to paint a bunch of murals all over your downtown and the rest of the city. So that's why I want to thank Long Beach. I want to thank all of you for being so welcoming to Jasper, to Powwow Long Beach, because the kind of art that is behind me is real art. These are artists. They should be respected for their work. They're using a unique style that really gets to certain parts of our community, that really speaks to young people, to certain communities, and I'm really proud of them to be here. So Jasper and your team, thank you. Welcome to Powwow Long Beach, and we're excited to see all the murals go up this week.
So I really appreciate Powwows coming in, partnering with community groups, talking about how we can revitalize our communities, and especially excited about the one that's going to be up at the center. We talk about how art can lift up communities that are sometimes in the shadows, whether it's the LGBT community, whether it's our Latino communities, our African American communities, and so it's great, again, to see you guys doing that.
Port of Long Beach has been super supportive of us and allowing us to let us paint such a crazy project on one of their pillars.
When I first started in the fine art world, I always knew I wanted to transfer into the street world, and I never really found a place until I started doing these water walls. It's tricky because bouncing up and down and looking at top level, I just have to wait for kind of that right timing. With Long Beach, we had a couple of different places in mind, but I was just really inspired by this space.
Very pet friendly. Everybody has a dog in Long Beach. It's Dog City.
Well, there's everything to do here. You got the Pike, you got Queen Mary, you got the beaches, you got paddle boarding, surfing. You go half a mile that way, you got surfing, you got downtown.
I just think it's the most incredible, most beautiful, most unique city, which has so much to offer. So I love it here and I'll never leave.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson, and today I am joined by Colleen Bentley, retired Director of Public Affairs and Special Projects for the California State University Chancellor's Office. And Colleen, you've been sharing a bit about your background and what you were doing as a consultant, but I want to focus in this last part of our program on specifically how those who are watching that are either part of businesses or nonprofits, or maybe they're on nonprofit boards, or maybe they're just individuals who could benefit from your expertise. You mentioned in the brochure that I saw about being smart when you're working with the media. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means, first of all, if you get a call, let's say you get a phone call from a reporter, and you decide, oh, this is something I don't want to talk about, so you don't return a call. And that's a bad thing. That's not being smart. So you should always return calls. You should honor deadlines, which used to be, till 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Now it's like 10 minutes or something. But you also should take control of an interview. I mean, there are a couple things in an interview. A, you always prepare. B, you have the ability to take control of an interview. It's not just the reporters. And the third is you always go in with messages. So you might want to say to the reporter, say you're on the phone, I need 5 minutes, I'll get right back with you, I'll call you back, and then do it. But take those 5 minutes to come up with 3 to 5 message points that you want to get across no matter what the reporter asks you.
Right.
You never wait for the perfect question. It doesn't come.
Right, right.
So you just have to be smart and realize that the reporter's doing his or her job, and you have a job to do. You need to get out information about Long Beach Community Action Partnership.
Right.
Don't waste a question without getting to some of your message points.
Now, I was watching, looking at some social media earlier today to see what we were posting, and I've noticed recently that one particular channel, even though they're on live TV, they're also live on Facebook with the camera off to the side. 24-hour social media and news has just changed the whole landscape since you came into the industry and I did. How so, and how is that good and bad?
Well, I think it's good because it does give you more outlets, especially if you are a small business or a nonprofit. You can use Twitter or Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram or who knows what's next coming down the pipe. You can use those as opposed to having to have a public affairs or public relations person on your staff, because that can get expensive. So you've got more outlets. So that's the good part about it. The bad part about it is that things often are wrong when you're using it so quickly, and people don't prepare sometimes, and they just go do an interview on the fly, and that's just not a good thing. So, I mean, there's certainly the good parts of it, but you still need to have the basics if you're going to, again, preparation, control, and have a message. So that's what you have to do in this, even though things change, basics of good interviewing and good media relations doesn't really change.
And you started out in the first half of this show talking about how you're doing this for people who are at the next level, might be the president of a university, but it sounds like these same concepts hold true to a nonprofit executive like myself or anyone else, correct?
Right, and it's the woman who I do the media training with in Washington, D.C., she has her own business in the Bay Area. She works with police officers, police chiefs, corporate people. She does a lot more of that than what I do with higher education. That's her business. So it's important no matter what your business or your nonprofit is, know.
Now, you mentioned even if a business or a nonprofit didn't have their own public relations and marketing department, but or a person, not let alone department. So how would you recommend to them really controlling their message and really making sure that they had a good face for the community in a proactive way, not just waiting for drama to happen.
Right.
I always tell my staff, for instance, at the school sites, that we're just one incident with a child away from being on the national news. So we have to be on our P's and Q's.
I know the same thing. I'm on the Community Improvement Board, and you used to be on that also, and we operate 2 child care centers, and you just worry all the time, about something happening. But you have to you just have to think. Your whole organization needs to know your mission, your vision, and so they need to be trained as spokespeople too, because you never know who's going to come into your business with a microphone or a newspaper, and you don't want to be caught off guard, obviously. I mean, you can direct them to the right person, but sometimes the right person is on vacation. The right person is not there. So I think your whole staff needs to know exactly what it is you want out there in the public.
Or it sounds like at least the protocol as to how to handle media
this.
when they come in.
Right,
Okay.
right. We'll be happy to help you,
Right.
but sit here for 5 minutes and let me go find the right person. And during that 5 minutes, you're, again, honing your messages, knowing what you want to get out and finding the right person.
Right. Now, you've sat on many boards in this community as
have you.
Yes, yes, and sometimes at the same time.
Right.
Have you noticed things locally that you wish you could have maybe gotten ahead of the curve on any of those scenarios to help an agency out to do better in any given situation?
Gosh. Let's see. We don't want to name
No?
names, do
No,
we?
not at all.
No, you
not
know
at
what?
all.
I think, like for example, the university, Long Beach
Right.
State, is got a good department, and so they do well. I think most of the local businesses and local businesses and nonprofits in the city do pretty well because of that nonprofit partnership that they have. They do a lot of speakers and help people, small businesses and things. So I think for the most part, I mean, I know some bad major stuff. I mean, look at Wells Fargo guy, look at Tony Hayward from British Petroleum. The coach at Rutgers who's throwing basketballs at kids and cursing. There's a lot of bad media we used.
And all of those are things that we could learn from locally.
Right,
Sure.
and that's the important thing of when we show these videotapes, because you can learn from somebody doing well and you can learn from somebody doing poorly. So
point.
it's really good, and people need to sometimes see things, not just hear me talking.
Right. So, again, going back to the brochure that I was reading more information about you, you mentioned that you had some keys to success when you're talking about messaging, and we wanted to share some of those thoughts. And one of the first ones was to prepare and know what you want to get across. And you alluded to that earlier, but when you talk about preparing and knowing what you want to get across, what would be key in that point?
Well, to think about if you only have if you're doing an interview, say a TV interview, you know that they're going to use this is a taped interview, they're going to use only 2 or 3 minutes.
Right.
So you want to keep going back to that message point. You want to have those three, you don't want to memorize, but you want to have those points in your head. I want to get across that our organization is the largest nonprofit in the county. We help this many people. Not a lot of numbers, but some numbers are good. So you just need to get, again, your mission. What is your mission and why is that important to the community? Things like that.
And then you talked about define the story in your terms when you deliver your message. I feel that that's kind of like living with it and then giving it back, huh?
Well, exactly. And you need a story. Every nonprofit, every business has a story. It's not just a building. So you just need to come up with a story. And here at Long Beach Community Action Partnership, you have some wonderful stories with the students you help, the energy assistance you do. All those kind of things are good stories. So you just need to have that story always in your head. An incident, an example.
Right. Oh, well, you remember that. It sounds like you would be a good board member, but we won't get into that right now. The other thing that you mentioned was don't worry if you repeat the message, and you just said that. The more you say it, the more likely you will be seen or heard. So
right, let's say a newspaper interview. You know they're going to use that statement one time, that message. But if you keep saying it over and over again, they're going to have to use it at some point.
Right.
You answer the question, you use a bridge statement. That's a really good point, Derek, what you just asked. But I think your viewers would like to hear this and then get into your message. And then you can always hook, what we call, hook your answer by saying, you know, we've been doing a lot of research in your sentence right there, and you as the interviewer would say, well, tell me some of your findings of your research, something like that. There's some little tricks you can do with,
Gotcha.
it's not tricks, it's preparation.
Right. You said determine 3 to 5 message points or SOCOs?
SOCOs. We call them SOCOs.
Okay.
And that's, again, the woman who I work with in the Bay Area, she calls it, it's like hitting one in Willie McCovey Park, you know, for those hated giants. But
yeah, those guys.
So it's a single overriding communication objective,
Okay.
a SOCO. So, and people, when we teach them, they remember SOCOs.
Right.
You know, you try to say, well, it's just your message points, but they remember SOCO and sock
There
it
you
out
go.
of the park.
And finally, you said, think of the 10 worst questions, which is interesting, you would be asked and prepare your answers. So I guess that's in being devil's advocate there, huh?
Right, and you can often get somebody, say somebody at your business, your nonprofit, to ask you those questions. You know, do a run through. It's again a part of preparation and stuff. And half the time, if you prepare the worst questions, because you know what's really going on, and the reporter may not know everything,
Right.
you're really well prepared. And most of the time, you're not going to get asked all those questions.
Yeah. And we only have less than 2 minutes now, but as we talk about this isn't just for those guys. This is for anyone who's listening that's engaged either from a volunteer perspective or on staff in our local community. Would you agree that these are important points?
I do think, again, it's being prepared for your job. I mean, you're not going to just come in to work and start to do something and realize you hadn't prepared for that when you know that you've got a meeting coming up. I mean, you just have to do it. So it's, again, you're preparing, you're taking control, and you're always having that message to deliver to your audience.
Well, your message has been right on point, and I'm going to take control, and we're going to have to wrap this up. Thank you so much for sharing, and I know I've learned even in this conversation, and I hope others who are watching have as well, and look forward to bringing you back maybe and sharing something in the future. I'd like to thank Colleen Bentley again for joining us today. Be sure to follow PadNet TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest updates. We also welcome your comments and thoughts regarding this show as we strive to make Long Beach Lands a favorite source of local news, information, and entertainment. This show has been brought to you with support from the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Thank you for watching Long Beach Lands.